Hi, I'm Brian Dunn, and welcome to the most important podcast ever. What makes it so important? It's not about me, it's about you. This podcast is about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, the moments of resilience, the lessons learned, and the small acts that make a big difference. From retail floors to boardrooms, we'll share the untold stories that shape lives and careers. I am very excited about this week's show. We have Michael Trebony as our guest. And I just have to tell you the story about how Michael and I met. It was 96, 97, right in there. I know, right? And I walk into a store in Cincinnati, Ohio, as memory serves.
Mhm.
And I was a young, like weeks into the job, regional manager. And I was quite unhappy because the store was, let's just say it wasn't sharp.
Let's be nice.
It wasn't even medium, it was sub medium. And I walked up to the first employee I could find. And I walked up and I said, "Hi, I'm Brian Dunn." And I shook his hand. And I could tell like those thought bubbles popped up over his head. Oh my gosh, another sport coat from Minneapolis.
Oh,
And I introduced myself and I said, "Can you tell me what's going on here?" And he looked at me and said, "I could tell you, but you don't want to hear." And I said, "Oh, I do. I do want to hear." And then we proceeded to have a conversation. My recollection is about 20 minutes where he told me from end to end his perspective on it. And that,
yeah.
of course, is our friend Michael Trebony, who's here today. And that began a years and years and years, a lifetime now, really,
Hmm.
of Michael and I touching base and connecting at sort of moments of strategic inflection. Michael was one of the
Right.
people I would call and say, "Hey, tell me how this policy is really working," because Michael was always a truth teller. Sometimes made him unpopular, sometimes made him very popular, but to thy own self be true. And that certainly was how Michael walked. So, Michael, welcome to the show and thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Brian. It's a blessing to see you after all these years. 30 years,
I
sir.
know,
30 years.
I
Time
know,
flies.
I know, man, it's crazy. Can't even believe it.
Yeah.
Uh, I'd love to hear just sort of a little bit about your journey. And then what I'd really love to talk about is how you came to be doing what you're doing today, because I think it's a really compelling story.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you, Brian. First of all, thanks for having this platform. I feel we need this more now than ever before. So I've been so inspired by the stories before. So thank you for sharing those. They're truly a gift. Those are extraordinary people. So I'm
For
not here
sure.
to, I'm not here, Brian, to talk about myself. I will say though that I was thinking of your tagline when you were saying, ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And I have to tell you, I actually would reverse that in my own life. I think personally, we were extraordinary when we were born, extraordinary creation inside the womb, knitted perfectly. In fact, I was so extraordinary, I was 12 pounds coming out. 12 pounds. Now, my mother would tell you that wasn't extraordinary, but I thought I was extraordinary. And
She would say
so
sub extraordinary for sure.
extraordinary. My first year birthday, I looked like a sumo wrestler. But anyway, so I got taller, so it worked out. But I will tell you that what's interesting about that moment we met is that you're one of the extraordinary people I met in my life. And let me explain why. See, right around my childhood, something drastic happened in my life, a traumatic experience. And men don't usually talk about it. It's usually kept in the secrets. And so I was assaulted as a child. My innocence was taken away. Everything that was extraordinary, Brian, at that time, I became ordinary. See, I believe that extraordinary is the gift of God, and it's instilled in all of us. But I became ordinary by the sin of another. And so when that happened, my intrusive thoughts just totally destroyed me. If you said, Brian, that I was smart, I said I was dumb. If someone said I was doing a good job, I would say I'm not enough. And so when that moment happened, it really rocked my world. I was 10 years old. I remember looking in the mirror after it was done, and I said, you know what, Michael, you're going to be just fine. Don't tell a soul, and leave this moment, and you're going to be good. And I became an actor that day, by the way. And no one knew for quite some time. But internally, Brian, that extraordinary creation actually became ordinary by the world's standards. And so you've really inspired me to think about my life today and kind of reflect back. And I hope it reaches one person out there. There was these three pivotal people in my life. The first one was, listen, I was a theater kid. It's where most misfit toys go. I went right to the theater. I learned that I could sing, and so people applauded, and I got validation. And that kid that was damaged, who thought he was unlovable, when I was on stage, it was extraordinary. People responded to my gift. And I got to this high school, and it was so funny. You and I have talked a lot about serendipitous moment, but there was a teacher that it was her first day, and her name is Dixie. Dixie Grimes is her name at that time. And so anyway, so we bumped into each other. My father's a preacher, and so we went back and forth to different schools. And so I was constantly adapting to new groups of people. And I bumped into her that day in the lunch cafeteria. And I said, excuse me, I'm looking for the theater program. And she said, oh, I'm sorry, I'm the music teacher. It's my first day. We don't have a theater program. And I said, well, that's unacceptable. We'll just have to change that. And sure enough, she and I created a magnet school program at Columbus High School together. And it was, those serendipitous moments where this teacher saw me. She saw the extraordinary self that I couldn't see in myself. And so Miss Dixie, as we called her, is kind of our Holland's opus, so to speak. And so she's been my best friend ever since.
And that solves a mystery for me, because on your posts from time to time, I'll see Dixie, and I bet that's Miss Dixie.
Listen, let me tell the audience, everyone needs a Miss Dixie in your life. Let me just be very clear. This troubled child who everything was okay on the outside. You have to remember, everybody thought everything was fine, but I was on the wrong track early. I was purposely failing out of school. I was purposely getting in trouble. I was purposely trying to damage, because if people were away from me, Brian, they wouldn't see the damaged, dirty, unlovable kid that was broken. And this teacher saw me, and she's been my best friend today. She's my biggest cheerleader, by the way. So everybody knows Miss Dixie. But anyway, you fast forward, Brian, and I'm going through life, and I quickly learned that this extraordinary self that was designed was broken, and I became a weapon of self-destruction. Let me explain. So in business, I didn't really belong there. I know I was kind of a weird person. I'm not a business guy. I've only spent 30 years in business, by the way, but I'm really not a business guy. But you came into that store location. You had no idea that if I didn't have that job, I would be living in a car. See, my father's a preacher. He used to tell me all the time, we're rich in eternity and poor in life. And so I worked multiple jobs to go to the Conservatory of Music in Cincinnati. And that day you asked me that question, first of all, I couldn't believe you noticed me. I was an occasional seasonal employee, by the way. Like, I just wanted to be hired. I just wanted to, they hired me on Black Friday, so I was like, and Jeff Arrington, by the way, is the one who hired me, another extraordinary guy that literally gave me a chance. And when you asked me that question, I had a lot of opinions, but I've learned I have to be careful with them, because sometimes people don't receive them, and you did. And I want to add a little bit more to your handshake. You didn't just shake my hand, sir. You actually got down on your knee to talk to me, because I was putting CDs on a shelf. And I thought, this man is incredible. He sees me. And I know this is not the Brian Dunn podcast, but I have to say, you played a pivotal part in being extraordinary as a leader to notice a kid. And by the way, I stayed 17 years, and you and I did great work together as we worked up the ladder there at Best Buy. And I just want to transition into this, as I went through all these start, stop. And I couldn't really figure it out. And this is leading me to my future state today. I didn't understand, Brian, why I couldn't just accept success. Now, I have this beautiful wife. You've met her. My beautiful children. I had a job with a fruit logo on my shirt. I was doing great work. I had the house on the hill. I just couldn't accept the love and the respect and the joy that I was seeing around me, because that kid internally was still saying, you're no good, you're ordinary. And what was fascinating about it is that I went through my 30s into some of the darkest periods in my life, Brian. I mean, from the time I was in my mid 30s into my like mid 40s, they talk about a lot. And no, I just got my master's in clinical mental health, and I learned about this thing called a midlife crisis. You might have heard that. Well, I didn't need to go to school for that. I lost not only my soul and my physical sense and my spiritual sense because I self-destructed. Everything that was in my head from all of that pain that was non-resolved trauma finally came out and exploded. And I did what we call the prodigal son. I went down this path that my father had taught me about and said, son, if you go too far away from the house, just look back, because the house of God has a porch light and the light is always on. And so during this moment of exploration and death destruction, my father grew ill. Now let me just explain a little about my father. My father is an extraordinary man. At the age of 20, he found this wonderful girl and fell in love with her, and she had a child, my brother. And my dad didn't want my brother to be raised without a name. So at 20 years old, not only did they get married, but he went down to the courthouse and changed my brother's name so that he would never know that he didn't have a father. I mean, at 20 years old, super extraordinary. So my father is my greatest preacher. He's my best man. He's my best friend. And he's my role model. Well, when I heard he was dying, in the darkest period of my life, I turned to service. And it was interesting, Brian, because for 3 years, I traveled back and forth to take care of my father. He was bedridden for about a year and a half in those final days. And as a preacher, I don't know if you know this, but when you said a 30-minute podcast, you and I both laughed because me trying to stay concise and small, that's my father. He would preach longer in a prayer than he would in a normal sermon. Well, let me tell you, for a year and a half, my stepmother and I, this warrior, extraordinary woman that she is, we served my father. He wanted to die in his home. Well, that meant that we had to clean him, we had to bathe him, we had to feed him, we had to do all of that stuff. And we did it. And guess what? I didn't think about myself anymore. I
Right.
stopped thinking
Right.
about that damaged kid. And I just said, I must take care of my father. And I want to share this with you because it's on my heart. And, in those last final moments, it was about 6 months, my best friend couldn't speak to me anymore. See, every weekend I would go up and clean him and take care of him. And then I'd just spend hours listening to him preach to me because, in my 40s, late 40s, it was good to hear somebody preach to me. And
Yeah.
so, but there came a point, Brian, that he could not speak to me anymore. He lost all cognitive abilities. So for about 6 months, closer to death, I lost my father. And in the middle of the night, around 2 a.m. in the morning, I heard rustling happening in his room. And I didn't want my stepmother to be bothered. So I got up and went into the room, Brian, really quick. And guess who was sitting straight up in his bed, his deathbed? Bright light was shining on him. It was dark in the entire house. And I walked in and I said, Dad? And he said, Michael, what are you doing here? Just as clear as day.
Wow.
And my father noticed me and saw me for the first time. And by the way, the last time before he died, I sat down on the couch and I said, he goes, sit down, let's talk, as if he didn't even know where he was. And so at 2 o'clock in the morning, for 14 minutes, I had my father's final sermon. And he preached to me and told me three things that I have learned that really changed the course of my life. And I'm sharing this to everyone that is out there listening today, that number one, my dad talked a lot about the door. He said that he was standing in front of the door, Michael. He said, as a preacher, I've seen so many people usher to that door, but now I must be courageous to knock on that door. He looked at me and said, son, be prepared today for the door. Live your life today like it's going to be the time that it's ending, and you will live the glory of God. And the second thing he said, which was amazing, he said, learn that you are truly a masterpiece. Now I'm bawling. I'm in the dark over in the closet, over there by the closet and the couch. And I'm bawling. He can't see me, but I can't help it. I know that he's giving me his final sermon. And he says Ephesians 2:10 is that we are created as masterpieces. And Brian, I needed to hear that. At the age of 50, I had my father remind me that all your sin and the things that you've done and everything that has happened to you is gone. It is away. And he said, remember, Michael, you're a masterpiece, so don't have any regrets. Live life and go out. And the third and final thing he said is he says it took him all these years to stand at the door and say he loves himself, he forgives himself, and he loves God. And he said to me, don't waste any more time, share the story, have a purpose in your life, and learn how to love and forgive. And so I wanted to share today, when you say, Michael, you've been 30 years in business, You did 15, 20 years in acting. Now all of a sudden you're going to be a therapist. You're going to open up this ranch, this what we call a revival for anybody out there that is struggling, that is shackled by sin or shackled by pain that has been inflicted upon them. I am proud to say today that because of my father and what he told me that night at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm free today. I can actually receive the words that you say to me. I can actually hear that I don't need the world's doings. I don't need, Brian, what they want me to do. Now what I'm saying is, not only was I 12 pounds born, but I'm actually an extraordinary spirit because I'm serving and I want to provide hope to those out there that are needing it right now. And so your podcast had me at hello. I was so excited to
That's
be on this
nice.
podcast with you just to say one thing. I'm proud to be happy, joyous, and free, and I'm blessed to be with you today to talk about it.
Well, your testimony is really brilliant and powerful, and I'm so glad you're in that place, Michael. That's great because whatever is inside us, we're all we're all beautiful, and we
Yeah,
all have our gifts. And unfortunately, there are circumstances and people that will try to tear down those gifts because they're not fulfilled themselves.
that's right.
And I'm really inspired by how you're now going. And I'm going to say preaching, Michael, because that's who you are. But I'm so glad you're doing that because
Yeah.
you have a message, and I think it is so important. So, can you
Thank you,
tell us
Brian.
about your work, the work you're doing now?
Well, it's radical. I believe that, I've often said, I kind of hope I don't get called. It's a lot of work. I kind of I liked playing the b-ball. I know
Yep,
you were a mentor of mine. And you tried many times to get me to go to that next level.
yep.
And I'm going, well, if I get to the next level, they'll know that I'm really dumb. See, the intrusive thinking in my brain that is healed now is really destructive to a lot of people. It is. The
Yeah.
sin of another can actually cause you to break down. And I have this calling right now, this like fire to create a space, a holistic space where people come that are suffering from the disease of addiction or trauma or anything that is causing them to be chained, to not live their life in extraordinary ways, because that's what I think is happening today. What's happening today is that we are getting so much consumed saying that we're average and that we're ordinary. We're not tall enough. We're not pretty enough. We're not skinny enough, and all of that stuff. And the light that is on that porch to the house that I returned to was a power greater than me. It was a power that grabbed me and said, "You are enough. And don't listen to the world. Go out. Don't be conformed to the world. Go out and bring others to that light." And so it's a concept that has been inside of me since I was at the corporate office. I had talked to a dear friend named Cal Patel, and I was a young, rambunctious person in corporate disrupting things. Thank you to you, Brian. But I was disrupting things, and he asked me an idea, and I said, I have this idea called Capture the Sparks. And he goes, well, what do you mean? And I said, I'm just obsessed with humans. I'm obsessed with people. Like when I go into a store or a district or a market, or shoot, if I'm just even like shopping, I'm obsessed with humans because they're not living their full potential. I can see it. I
Mhm.
didn't either. I lived underneath myself. I led underneath myself. And so this mission that I have right now, I thought it was going to be a consulting gig. And that's why I self-destructed, because God was saying, no, Michael, it's not about you. It's not about you, Michael. It's really about this light that I want you to bring to people. So Capture the Sparks is really saying, my light was almost out, Brian. Me sitting here talking to you today, I'm a dead man that's now alive. And I know there are other people just like me that may be listening to this that have the chains on them. And I'm saying, break the chains. And this Capture the Sparks ranch that I have now said, okay, let me go get some education. Let me understand clinical mental health. Let me make sure I get this is a totally different thing than business for 30 years. I could have wrote out the sunset there, but I feel called for the first time in my life, Brian. I feel called to actually say, stop it, Michael. Don't allow the world anymore to tell you not to do it. And so this ranch idea is that men and women, single, together, families, children, anybody that is broken or hurt is going to come to the ranch and they're going to find a power greater than themselves and let go of the chains. And then their spark will ignite. And you've seen this in business that we've done together. It's radical when you see a human that actually the light goes on. I mean, don't you think that? What do you think, Brian?
I do. I'll tell you what. I think it's amazing. And the reason why I call it the most important podcast ever is because these stories are so important. This world we're in now is just churns, and it seems to churn against us and pound against our self-esteem, our thoughts, our visions for what we want. And I think that holding up these stories and understanding the magnificence of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, the back end of that statement, and I'm sure you remember me talking about it, is it proves there's no such thing as an ordinary person. We are all inspired creations,
Yeah.
period. And
Yeah.
I'm really glad, Michael, that you're in a place where you feel like your gifts can be deployed in service, because
Mm.
that's the purest form of love.
Love
I've
that.
you were a caretaker for your father. I've been a caretaker for
You know.
my beautiful
Mhm.
wife, my lovely mother, and there's a sanctification that happens when you are doing the most personal task for those you love and caring
Yeah.
for them. And one day I'll tell my story about all that. But I just want you to know I really appreciate you sharing all this with us. And I also think it's very powerful. I can see how inspired you are about what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll tell you, Brian, thank you for that. And listen, and I'm 52 and I feel five again, so that trauma, I specialize in trauma and addiction. And so that trauma stunted me. So it happened at 10, and then I literally could have been a 40-year-old, 10-year-old. When you have trauma like that and you don't heal it and give it to God or give it to a power greater than yourself, guess what happens? You remain.
Don't you think? I tell people all this time, and when I give talks, I think it's the secret to longevity and a fulfilled life,
Mm,
caring about loving something greater
yeah,
than yourself. It can be your family, it can be your friends, it can be your church community, it can be your community. Whatever it is,
yeah.
find something that you care about more than yourself, so that you can give yourself to it.
That's right. That's right. And also cleaning yourself. Like, think about this, Brian. Those millstones around my neck, some caused by others, because everyone is sick. Like, there's no one worse than the other. We're all sick. We're waiting for the return, but we're all sick. The millstone that I had around my neck from someone else, I placed my own millstones around my own neck, and
Of
it was
course.
weighting me down. So I had to remove those so that I am free. That's the transformation from acting ordinary, which, by the way, I'm going to give everybody that's listening to this a little test. I want you to get out of bed tomorrow, and I want you to put your feet on the ground, and I want you to pause, and I want you to say, "Oh my God, I'm extraordinary." Why? You're not supposed to stand on 2 feet. The gravity is not, the science doesn't work. If it worked, every animal in the kingdom would be walking around on 2 feet. Anybody with children out there knows the most glorious day is when our children learn that they can walk on 2 feet. But we take it for granted, Brian. Every morning we wake up and we think of the big houses and everything we need, when really we're standing. We're up on 2 feet, and we're so extraordinary to do that. It's the small acts of extraordinary ways that I believe has taken those chains off of me and made me what I call now a dealer of hope.
I love that. I'll also say this: your traumas were very, the magnitude of them,
Mhm.
criminal, right? Just
Mhm.
huge. But I think everybody we see out there walking around has some version of a
Yes.
trauma that is
Yes.
it resolves itself inside us. It's like this imposter syndrome.
Mm,
And
mm.
I hope that one of the things this podcast does is it has people look in the mirror and say, wow, I didn't know that about Matt, or I didn't know that about Susan, or I didn't know it about Michael, but I can do this.
Yes.
I care.
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be faith. I mean, for me, I'm a Christian, I'm a proud Christian, but it's about all of us and
Mm,
finding what is our higher power. What is the thing that we care about more than just ourselves? By the way, it's important to care about ourselves. It's important to love ourselves. But it's
right.
also important to give that gift.
Yeah. It's
So,
beautifully stated.
well, thank
Beautifully
you very
stated.
much. Um, so you've just graduated, is that correct?
Yes. Shocking.
Congratulations.
Shocking. The kid that didn't want to graduate high school, the guy that purposely failed. And I mean, it's not like I'm not able to complete things, but it's just I was a weapon of self-destruction. I am very proud to say that my trauma no longer has power over me. I'm ready now. I'm ready for the calling. So yes, I've graduated and I'm now being taught by the greatest in the industry.
That's fantastic, Michael. Um, I'll tell you what I'd love to do is we go to wrap up this episode, and I imagine we'll have more. I'm wondering if you had a piece of advice for someone out there that has a hurt or a
Mhm.
trauma that they're holding inside. If you could give them a simple
Sure.
piece of advice, what would you say?
Sure. Let me be very clear. Learn from me. Don't waste decades of your life hiding your trauma. Don't. I thought it was my fault. I thought I was the reason. And that's what assault survivors all say, and we still hide it. What I'm saying is, whatever trauma you have, give it to a good person. Give it away. Give it to somebody that can listen, because what you're going to find out is what kept you down will actually free you to help others. So please don't wake up today and say, I'm ordinary. You're not ordinary, but the trauma that inflicted you actually made you ordinary. So free it, let it go, and share it with someone that loves you. That's my selection there.
That's beautiful, Michael. And we're going to link to this episode some places where if you're feeling a real
Yes,
mortal trauma, where you can reach out and get help because you are not alone. No
that's
one
right.
is alone. You're
That's
only
right.
alone as long as you keep it inside. So we'll
That's
we'll
right.
link that for some people.
Love it.
Michael, I love you, brother, and I really
I love you.
appreciate you taking time today. And I have a feeling there'll be a good cause for us to get back together on this
I love
episode,
it,
another
Brian.
episode. So
Thank you, Brian.
you take care of yourself, and thank you so much.
See you later.
And that's it for our episode today. I want to thank our friend Michael Trebony for sharing his powerful story. And I want to thank you, our listeners, who have made this such a gift to me. I love doing this podcast. I love putting these stories out there. And again, not because they're about me, they're not. They're about you and they're about these wonderful people. So, in the meantime, until our next time, be out there looking for the magnificent in the ordinary. And we'll talk to you soon.